can get about 3 tons in a can. So that's, let's roughly say minimum $125 a can, plus a delivery fee and a pickup. So $175, $200 a can. People can have them for 3 days. We do have, if they go, or 4 days, if they go 5 days or beyond, there's a weekly rental rate. And so we're looking at, you know, not only the disposal revenue, but the delivery and the pickup and the rental on that as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you bet.
Any further comments? Take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Have a
Thanks,
good day.
Mary.
See, 1050 Teresa Munson, Public Health Nurse Memorandum of Understanding between Broadwater Health Center and Broadwater County Public Health Department.
Morning.
Morning.
So this is a fairly new document, this memorandum of understanding. Last year, the CDC put into place a new healthcare coalition. This is kind of getting off of its feet between public health and hospitals and other urgent care centers. And so I went to some training a couple weeks ago and realized that our department did not have this, and a lot of other counties didn't have them as well. An understanding between their hospital and their public health department that they would work together in the event of a public health emergency. So it's just an understanding that public health and the hospital will work together for animal bite reporting, investigation, disease reporting, investigation follow-up, health assessment and promotion, increasing vaccination rates, public health emergency preparedness training and exercising, and that's basically the nuts and bolts with the healthcare coalition. They found out that the hospitals and the public health were not playing well together pretty much everywhere, but we're focusing on Montana, obviously. So they had some examples of just a general MOU between public health and the hospital, and when I talked to the director of the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program, he thought that we should get ours into place before any such takeovers or change in management. Billings Clinic and St. Pete's both have these with those, or you know, with their respective counties, and they're very familiar with them. So their suggestion was that we go ahead and get this signed with the Broadwater Health Center and Wellness Clinic, and then we'll redo one in the future when everything is said and done. So,
That was my question, if we're gonna have to
yes.
redo it, okay.
Yeah,
Very
we
good.
will. So that, we already have an MOU with the hospital lab to store our vaccines in the event of a long power outage, because they're the only ones that have backup generators. We do have a generator we can start in our facility, but you know, that would be for a limited amount of time. If we had to store our vaccines for, you know, say 2 or 3 days, we would transport them to the hospital. They're the only ones that have temperature regulated refrigeration, and that's what we have to have for our vaccines. So we do have that, and that is updated every year. But so this one is actually a new document for our county. That's all I need.
I think this is excellent, thank you. Didn't realize the CDC was initiating this, but I thought it was all your brainchild. So kudos to you. I move that we sign the MOU as presented by Teresa and described.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made, seconded to approve memorandum of understanding between the Broadwater Health Center and Wellness Clinic and the Broadwater County Public Health Department. Any further comment? Take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. o'clock, let's see, sign the buy-sell agreement to purchase the Opportunity Bank for the county annex. Did Corey give us anything?
Not here, have to go grab it or something.
Corey had a question on this attorney fees, he was in contact American Federal about it.
Okay.
When we fell in, because I went through there, it's like, oh my God, containers up there, it's, where they live. They go on their money. So they just merged together, there's no, but it's still called Opportunity? Yeah.
State Bank of Townsend and Division of Opportunity for 2 years, yeah.
Well, it's, yeah, hopefully they don't do it again. Yeah. We should get that building really cheap.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So did you get a chance to talk to him?
I left him a message, I have not heard back from him,
Okay.
but did Commissioner Polper tell you what I told him?
Did you, what was a line, was it 21?
So paragraph 21, the agreement's fine, it's well written and everything. The only issue is, and I've always asked for this on every contract, so I think we should maintain the consistency, is paragraph 21 is, if there's any lawsuit between us and the seller to enforce any parts of this agreement, the prevailing party shall be entitled to all costs of lawsuit, including attorney's fees. And under Montana law, ordinarily, both sides pay unless an agreement specifically allows attorney's fees. It never makes sense for us to agree to this, because we have attorney cost of attorney in litigation is either gonna be me, or it's gonna be covered under our Mako insurance. So, if we are bearing our own, that's the, kind of the best deal for us. If we have to pay theirs, if we were to lose, which would only happen if it was, a bad faith thing, but it would be very expensive for us. So, what I have suggested on every contract is that regardless of the outcome of any lawsuit, each side bears its own costs and attorney's fees. So I told Scott Spee, who's their attorney, that was my recommended change from the current language. Other than that, I don't have any other issues with the agreement. I guess in light of our previous conversation we just had, it might make sense to do a 2-week advertisement on this, since it is a contract for $150,000.
This is not a resolution. It has been in the clerk and recorder's office for a week for anyone to review, and it's been on the agenda no less than 3 or 4 times. So, again, just sticking with the policy that we have. If we want to change the policy, that's fine, we can change the policy. The policy we have would not require that a contract be treated as a resolution, because it is not a resolution. This has had quite a bit of the ability for the public to review it. I don't think that we should continue to delay getting this signed. We've signed one already, but this has changed because we're going with the Bureau, or the Board of Investment loan. So I would concur with Corey's change to the attorney fees. Do appreciate that he has talked to Scott. And I think it's important that maybe we change that language and sign it with a change of language. If they are opposed to that, then we can go back to the drawing board, but at least we would have, made a good faith effort.
So since we're recommending a change, we shouldn't sign the current draft that you have until we get their agreement on it. But
No, but couldn't we move to sign and have you make the change? And then, since you've already talked to their attorney, give them back the contract with the change. If they're opposed to that, then it's null and void. If they accept your language change, especially since it's grounded in Montana law, then we've done our due diligence.
Well, so I left them a message, I haven't actually spoken to him, and I don't know that they're going to agree to it. And my sense is that, I mean, the best plan is that we actually have an agreement on the document that before we sign it. I did wanna follow up on the contracts. So the contracts that I'm referring to that are over 80,000 that require specific printed notice would not be this same type. Those are for contracts for the purchase of a vehicle, road machinery or other machinery, apparatus, appliance, equipment, or materials or supplies for construction, repair, or maintenance. So this is purchase of a building is not in that same category, so but either way, I recommend you, let's get the actual agreement that they're good with before we sign it. That'd be my recommendation.
Wouldn't you recommend that you would post that again since the language has changed?
So when a commission takes any document that they've given notice to, they're not limited from their ability to make an amendment at the time
Without
of
us
adoption.
knowing.
Right, they don't have to like, if say you make an amendment, whether it's a typo or this would be a substantive change, you don't have to repost that amended document for 2 more weeks. By giving notice of this is what the issue is, anyone that's interested can come here, and they do have the power to make adjustments before they sign it. But I think, I would recommend you could continue to give this notice 1 more week, so long as they agree to our change, and you would have the power to make that amendment and that change and approval at the next meeting. Otherwise, any amendment would necessarily delay your action forever, so.
Could we just vote to approve this contract with that, if that change is accepted then?
You could do that, but I would recommend you don't sign it till we have the actual signed document, or the actual final document.
Okay.
So, and then, so if they say no, absolutely not, then I'll come back to you and we'll have to figure out what we're gonna do. It's unlikely.
So is there a second to approve the agreement?
Yeah, I'll second it on, that we wait until we get the correct language and then we'll sign the document at the same time.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the agreement with Opportunity Bank on the Opportunity Bank building, not to sign the agreement until we receive the new agreement with section 21 stricken or rewritten. Is there any further discussion?
So for clarity, we're approving based on approval of that change.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
What is the purchase price? I've heard all kinds of figures.
150,000.
And what is the interest rate?
The 3% Mary just
3%
mentioned.
intercap loan, right?
Yeah, it was
3%.
3 point something, I don't
That was
remember.
stated differently also in the beginning, so we're just curious.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Let's see, 11 o'clock, fiscal county budget, Debbie Cully, finance officer. Set COLA, department budget, mills, entitlement share, salary matrix, make or market adjustments, job descriptions.
guys received our valuations.
Yep.
And we ran the tax levy requirements limitation sheets. We plugged those into the budgets. And there was an increase that the recommended COLA is sustainable. We're able to levy about 4% of the net and gross proceeds on new homes. So that's helped. So despite the mills being slightly lower, the value of those mills were more significant than the previous year, which actually has generated more revenue than the mills themselves would have by themselves. You guys will wait to make decisions then on what the valuations were. And then once you make your decisions, then you can proceed with working towards the actual final budget hearing on the 3rd of September.
Debbie, the tax levy requirements reports that you emailed us had the COLA that was passed by the county compensation board already built in.
Correct.
That 3.9 is what we're going with for the COLA.
That's what the board recommended, yes.
Okay.
So, we need to vote on that so that Debbie can build the budget. Not build it, but solidify what she's already done. With that, we still have 14% reserves in the general fund and 9% in public safety. Both are looking a lot stronger this year than last year for sure. One thing with that COLA, same story as with the centrally assessed hit that we took last year. Debbie, can you explain, I know I'm kind of hitting you without notice, but can you explain how that works? How the centrally assessed money that we lost last year isn't a repeated loss, it's already been realized in the budget, and how the COLA this year isn't an increase in people's taxes by any stretch, and that it's in the budget for this year and carries on to future years, just like the centrally assessed.
Centrally assessed is a one-time hit, just like new growth. It's in the year, they recognize it, and it's done. So all the growth we recognized last year offset the centrally assessed, so we were stale. That's done, they didn't do it again this year, so this year's growth is on new growth that they recognize this year. And that's just what allows the county to collect the revenue they need to operate and maintain their services.
So the COLA is essentially being paid by the new people who've moved to the county.
Some, but not necessarily true.
Okay.
COLA could come from, even if we didn't have new growth, it would be based on the value that they're assessing. So everybody's home appreciates, or should appreciate, based on their income, their improvements to it. That just increases the value. What the new growth does is instead of 10 homes sharing the money, you've got 12 or 15 homes sharing that amount of revenue. And then it just increases what everybody gets to bill, what the county gets to charge in taxes on their tax bills.
As determined by Department of Revenue.
As determined by Department of Revenue. We don't have anything to do with that.
So at the county compensation board, we talked about if we had been able to give just the CPI, which is the consumer price index of last year and this year, it would have been 4.4%, because it was 2.1 and then 2.3 or 2.3 and 2.1, right?
2.1 and 2.3.
Thank you. 3.9 is less than that still, which means our folks are still behind, but 3.9 at least brings them closer to where they should be and would have been. It also helps us, and that was the argument made by our citizen members, we have to keep an eye on retention and attraction. We have to be able to attract good people to work for us. So that's why the argument at the county compensation board was to start at 4%. The members said, well, for such a round number, it sounds better to go to 3.9, and then the counter proposal was, well, let's do 3.95, and we settled at 3.9. So, I would move that at least for the COLA, or not at least, but just the first agenda item here, that we set COLA for fiscal year 20 at 3.9%.
Is there a second?
Yeah, we have some great folks we need to take care of, so I will second that.
And all of our budgets are figured on that number, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Until we just got our valuations, that's what we're setting, until we got valuations to know if we needed, like last year, we had it set, but then had to take it away because they were stagnant and we couldn't have afforded or sustained the COLA last year. So that's why they were froze.
So even with this COLA, we're still establishing, we're still putting some money into reserves in most departments.
Mhm. General fund is 14% this year, last year it was 11%.
Okay.
And there were several of the separate independent funds with their valuations, like road, mosquito, weed. Their values were high enough that to cover their expenses and their taxable revenue, they had money to put into their CIPs. So they didn't exceed their 33%, which is what the goal is for everybody. They're getting there, it's just slower than others.
Is there any further discussion on the COLA?
I have a question.
Yes.
So one of the things that we talk about every year, and I wasn't at this particular county compensation board meeting, I had to be out of town for court, but an issue we talk about every year, and and I'm concerned that it's continuing to be a greater problem every year, is the fact that when we do a COLA at 3.9%, and that translates, and that's from the county compensation board meeting, that is establishing a COLA for the elected officials. And that's all their purview of their discussion is. But, of course, the county commission generally says we're gonna apply that fairly to everybody. So if elected officials get 3.9%, then all the employees do. The problem is, as we know from statutory restrictions on the salaries for law enforcement, is that they do not get that much money. The sheriff gets that. The undersheriff is capped at 95% of his wages, and then it goes down from there. So, year after year, what's happening is, everybody in the county is getting a certain number, the deputies are necessarily, mandatorily getting less. Where that's causing the problem, number one is probably just for them to know, hey, we're getting less of a raise than everybody else. But then secondly, is within the employee structure within the sheriff's office, and I'm gonna stop talking on this in a minute and ask the sheriff if he wants to talk about it, is it affects how detention officers get more of a raise over certain years than deputies. And there's times, certainly right now, dispatch, we're all agreeing they need more money. But cumulatively, over the course of 10 years, this is creating a problem. And the suggestion I've had the last 2 years, and it wasn't my original idea, I got it from Wynn and Brandon, was we have to at some point make a hard decision to give a different COLA level for elected officials than for everybody else. That's the only way that I can see mechanically, functionally, for the deputies to begin to catch up relative to their peers in the sheriff's office. So, do you guys want to comment on that?
Do I want to? No, I don't. Daryl and I had a conversation about this, and this is one of the things that as elected, we're starting to see people that are outside their appointed positions within the county that are starting to make quite substantially more than elected officials do. And that's becoming a really hard sell when you ask people, I'm gonna ask you, I've said this a million times, I'm gonna ask you to come I want you to give up your personal life, I want you to give your family time, I want you to work days, nights, weekends, holidays, everything else, I want to take you away from your family and everything else. And I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna pay you a whopping $20.40 an hour. Even, exactly what he's saying is that when we talk about recruitment and retention, I can't recruit and I can't retain. And we all know that right now, I'm one dispatch away from closing the dispatch center down. If another one walks out the door, we have to shut it down. And so, when we talk about recruitment and retention, I have to be able to give a dog a bone once in a while, but it goes with the deputies as well. And when we start talking about trying to find qualified people to come and work here, when Gallatin County, and I hate using Gallatin, Lewis, and Clark, but they're my two biggest nemesis, because the fact is one's starting out at 26 something an hour, the other one's starting out at 28 an hour, and I'm starting out at 20.40 an hour. And who the hell wants to come here, work by yourself, weekends, nights, holidays, and everything else, and make, starting out $6 less an hour, then you got very minimal amount of room because of statute, because they keep changing the population threshold. They go from, they start out 85% of what I make, after their year of probation, they go to 86. And then after that, once they don't have another increase until the 5-year deputy, they go to 87%. The detective's 85.5, the sergeant's 88, and then the captain's 90. And that's it. And that's the growth. You can spend your entire career at a senior deputy level, which is all $21 an hour. And that's without the cost of living. And then when you do get a cost of living, everybody else gets, so the pension's getting a 3.9, and these guys are getting 87% or 86% of what I make. So whatever 87% of 80 or 3.9%, that's what the deputies get. So now we're starting to see where our detention, we're gonna have some detention officers who have been with us for a long time, they're gonna be making more as a detention officer than as a sworn officer on the street. And so that's, when we start, I'm just a small part of, I'm 30 people of a population of 65 county employees. But, like I told Folkford, Commissioner Folkford, is that if I can't figure out how to start retaining some of these folks, and they keep walking away and I have to start shutting stuff down. One thing that no one's talked about is this illustrious medical insurance that we all have. That will go away. The 3 road guys are not gonna be able to sustain enough Teamster money and interest to coagulate the other 65 in the county. So there's a huge ripple effect in what we're doing, and at some point, as Corey says, we need to have a conversation about changing the way we do business. Because the fact is that the sheriff's office is becoming a very low-paid, highly dangerous, low-paid position within the county. And I'm gonna work my stuff regardless, but if you want people on the streets, I guess we're gonna have to have a hard conversation and make some changes in some fashion. And I appreciate Corey bringing this up, I guess, but that's just where we're at. And this year we are where we are, but I think we might have a plan, depends on how things go, to kind of rectify some of the dispatch issues so we don't have to close that down. But, anybody got any questions or concerns or gripes or anything or something?
So I have a comment.
You bet.
We're kind of held hostage a little bit by the statute, and so, I'm gonna ask you guys, just the public perception, county officials give themselves a 5% increase, our employees get 3.9%. How does that play out?
Good question.
Yeah,
I'd like the answer.
I have a pretty good idea how that's gonna play out,
It's a hard pill to swallow.
yeah.
Corey,
So what do we do?
bringing that up, some of you know, some of you don't. I was in the reserve program and we started at Thompson with sheriff, and so I've been in law enforcement. I support law enforcement 100%. And I understand about statutes, but I also understand county commissioners, and I think Corey is doing an excellent job. And I believe you guys in a way can fix this problem and cure it, but when these officers put their life on a line, we lost Jason Moore. This is terrible. They're supporting our families, our kids, our babies, our grandparents, our people that has passed. they should be getting way more than any county employee. Please try and do something. This is Broadwater County. We could set the precedence for the United States of America. We are different. We are kind-hearted, honest people. And for the county employees to wear more than a female or a male that's wearing a gun, that'll walk in front of us if somebody's gonna kill us, for God's sakes, try and do something. Change the way it is. The sheriff, way back when I was involved, and way before, clear back, I know Norman Bruce's, Mike would probably know, grandfather was a sheriff, clear back then. I mean, there was a sheriff and a city law enforcement, there wasn't any. But look at what they're going through now with the drugs and the killings, and you don't know who's gonna walk around and kill people. This has changed. We have to change this. Please, as commissioners, work with your county attorney, work with your sheriff, do something to get them paid so that the sheriff is not, he can't compete with Gallatin County, Lewis and Clark. Nobody's gonna come, they don't wanna come here and work. And they're risking their life and getting up every morning for $20 here, even 26, 28, come on. Put yourself in their position and go out to somebody that's holding somebody hostage in their house with an AR-15 or a handgun. And the sheriff's deputy walks in front of you, and he's the one who puts his life on line and takes care of our babies. Come on, please, please, help us.
All right, so I got a question. This is a good time to ask it. I'm gonna drop the bomb on everybody. So if our current tax base can't support it, I mean, we do what we can, would the citizens of Broadwater County support a mill levy to help this sheriff's department make ends meet?
I would say the people that I know, the rural people, would be for that 110%. But they are against it 110%. What the county has done with hiring all of the employees, the road department, the different ones, I don't know the name of them all, and paying them and giving them all the wages, solid waste department, all the raises. They are so against all that. Take that money back. Put it in law enforcement. Law enforcement should have been in the
Here's my
front.
proposal, Bill, is what if it's a public safety mill levy that's specifically just for them?
I'm sure it would pass.
That's all where the money goes.
I'm sure would pass, and make sure that that's the only place the money goes. But the public is still asking you to back up on the rest of these things that are going on that we're not getting serviced on. From the solid waste to all the other employees that the county has hired, that the county does not need. The 3 county commissioners can make the decisions and run the road department. They can run the garbage department. They can do all of this. It can change, but yes, I am sure this county would support this law enforcement, as long as every penny went to them, wasn't used up in government like other things are.
Okay?
You gotta cut somewhere, and I agree with you. I agree with you, you gotta cut somewhere.
So if you pass this mill levy, it still doesn't do our deputies any good.
Yeah. So, that's the concern. So obviously, you're not gonna do that this year, I understand that. So maybe we're looking at this for next year, as far as this adjustment. And I'm not doing this because I want a raise, because I've turned down my raise every year I've been here. The issue is, that's the only way, if the other employees are here, that's the only way to bring the deputies up relative to them. And the other thing we've got is the Me Too clause, which is kind of is because of the union that the deputies did, now it's potentially hurting them, I don't know. But, they're not in the union, I'm just looking at them just because they're.
So the Me Too clause isn't quite in effect, so, you know, that's the thing that, and I did talk with the union about it, because market wage adjustment, that was one of the things that we clarified in two contracts ago, I think, was that because of the fact is no one was getting market wage adjustments, so everybody kind of, once we got that solidified where market wage adjustments were okay, it didn't fall necessarily in the Me Too clause, that's where it was changed. And I think that's where a lot of this comes in, but the commission's never been against market wage adjustment. The problem is there's no funding for it. And so every time we talk about a market wage adjustment to get anybody up to where it was, the next question was, where are you gonna get the revenue? And, which takes me back where I don't wanna go, so I'm not gonna go there, in regards to funding. But we do have to do something, and I agree with what Bill's saying, that that's when we start having a conversation about a public safety mill levy, every one of them came down to, is that we wanna ensure that the money went there, and we can't ensure that. And so, no one was comfortable with the fact of going down that path, because there was nothing in stone, or written in stone, or on the 10 commandments that said that this money will go to law enforcement only, and what we had at the current time in regards to funding and state entitlement and everything else was not gonna change. So without some guarantees in life, no one was gonna jump on board with that. That's why I couldn't find anybody who was willing to step up to the plate. And so it kind of goes back to what Bill was saying. I think the support is there, and people can appreciate it. I think that in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't be bad. The only other caveat to that, though, would have to be, you're gonna, in order to adequately pay law enforcement, public safety, dispatch control, detention, whatever, there's gonna have to be an agreement within the confines of the Board of Commissioners, I would think, that says that we're gonna have to change the matrix of what electeds look like. You know, right now, every elected official is at the same amount of pay. And I'm not sure, I haven't necessarily found that. I know the treasurer and the sheriff are supposed to be at the same pay, but outside of that, I don't know if all the other ones are in statute.
They are.
They are in statute?
Yep.
So you're gonna have to look at that big grand scheme of things to change that, because even if we did a public safety mill levy to increase the wages of the sheriff's deputies, to get them up to a standard we're gonna retain and recruit, and even our detention and our dispatch, the fact of the matter is you're gonna still have to change all the elected officials all the way down the pipe. And then that goes with their deputies as well. So it's not necessarily just a public safety component issue, it's all the way around. So, which convolutes and makes it a messier mess anyways, unless there's something I don't know about, the loophole to get around it. But as far as I know is that electeds, we'd all be doing the same thing. So, unless I'm wrong, I'm not an attorney,
Well,
I'm just a dumb cop.
so I think if you get a big amount of revenue, it gives you the ability to do some things. There's a couple things. One is the coroner qualification and stipend. That may be a place where maybe Wynn says every deputy's gonna be a deputy coroner, and then that stipend is more. I don't know if that's an option. That's probably not an option, because some people can't get through the course, right?
Well,
It's a
the problem
tough
is-
course.
Well, it's not a tough course, I teach it. If I can teach it, you can pass it. I can teach a monkey how to ride a
Gee,
stick.
thanks.
But the fact of the problem is that then you have a continuing education requirement, and that's why I don't do it.
Okay.
Is that for every year, I would lose half my patrol division to go to advanced corps. And so that doesn't work.
Okay.
And
So what about the option of more deputies on the road? So you always have 2 on the road, right? I think us, they made the sacrifice of filling a deputy position down south and not filling the detective position. Well, that's killing me, I'll tell you. It's killing me a lot. So, Nick's doing double duty right now. The other one is, we've got to go on offense on the types of investigations we need for the drug dealing around here. That's a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of patience. That's really probably a dedicated person. And then I don't know if that would help you do a market wage adjustment on a dispatch if you had the revenue to do it. So those are the kinds of things that would help them.
market wage adjustment right now, private dispatch would be huge, and that's what we're kind of looking at, right? I mean, right now, I think Gallup paying is just under $19 an hour starting out for dispatching, and Lewis and Clark's 19 something to change in dispatch, and we're at 1403. And that's, $5 more an hour, I think I'll drive 20 miles for work. Just from getting in it, but that's a chunk of change throughout the year. So that's just some of our dilemmas. So, but as long as we kind of got way off in the weeds on that, thank you, Cory.
Sorry.
But you know, I think if we're gonna set the mills and it's gonna come back to this budget back around, you know, if our budget is set, preliminary budget that Under Sheriff Harris submitted, with the mills and everything else, we might be able to, with the increase into what the mill values were, I think we could actually sustain an increase, the dispatch, and we talked about doing it over the course of, over the year, so it wasn't a gouge out at the same time. But like I said, if we don't do something, then it'll be, we're all gonna have a bad day. That's just, let me be honest, it's not just me, it's everybody in this room is gonna have a bad day. So, if I can't keep the ones I got, and I hate to say that our world revolves around 4 dispatchers sitting in a center of a jail, but, we got a whole lot of cards right now, so.
One of the things that we did that nobody's mentioned, and I think it's significant, it answers a lot of the comments from the public. And we worked a lot with Brandon on this, had a very long meeting to get to this point. But for the first time, this commission, working with Brandon, got shift differential for our sworn deputies. That's huge. I don't remember what the total cost was that will go into deputies' pockets, but it is significant. That needs to be part of this discussion. We've never had shift differential for sworn deputies, and we do now, starting July 1. So we have made strides. We can't bypass the law. We simply can't. And that's what sets deputies. But I think we should absolutely be remembering those shift differentials we got this year, because it is a big deal. Not only for this conversation, but for those deputies as well.
Mr. Chairman, can you explain that, what you're talking about, the shift difference?
For anyone in the union, for the sheriff's shop, if you work weekends, nights, there's a power shift. I don't know if that's sworn. But so the shifts that are not what everybody wants, essentially, they are getting 45 cents an hour for one and 30 or 35 for the other.
40 cents and 10 cents for weekends,
40 cents and
for nights, and 10 cents for weekends.
okay,
So we're talking
so,
about 40 cents more per hour or 10
Yeah.
cents.
Yeah.
right,
That doesn't seem to be huge to me.
it is huge when you look at the overall budget. And when we're strapped by law, it is something we can do. We can't go any higher because we have to make sure that nobody gets to above that percentage set in law. So we went to the ceiling on that, and it is a big deal.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I guess what I don't understand is these percentages, that's Montana law, Broadwater County statute?
Montana law,
Oh, goody.
yes, Bill.
Is there, maybe Corey could answer it, or commissioners, is there a way to give additional incentives to law enforcement officers that could get us around that law, so that they, whether you paid a car payment, paid a house payment, is there ways around this to work with law enforcement and help them? There must be something, if it's a Montana statute and it needs to go through the legislature, that the county commissioners of all the counties could support that maybe in the future, but is there a way to give them, where you give them a credit at the grocery store for $100 a month? Is there something that can be done now, instead of letting this go? Is there something that could be addressed? Please, let's think about it. Corey, can that be a possibility?
Well, there's a couple of thoughts. One is, there is, and I'm gonna show you the exact statute here in a second, but there are a couple of things that deputies do get. They do get a longevity pay for the number of years that they're in law enforcement.
Yes.
And other employees don't get that. If you're a deputy coroner, or an assistant coroner, maybe they're called, there's deputy coroner, there's a stipend for that. And basically you're on call, however they rotate the schedule, but you could get called out you could get called out Christmas morning, opening presents with your kids to go to a coroner call.
Correct.
I'm sure it's happened. There's obviously the shift differential. Are there other things out there that I'm not thinking of?
Yeah, all stipends, I mean, there's, you mentioned the housing thing, I think, that'd be kind of a tough sell for here, because counties use it for, Big Sky, for instance, in Gallatin County, roughly $1,000 a month, the Big Sky deputies get for a living stipend, because you cannot afford to live up there.
Yeah.
But for Broadwater, everything's pretty roughly the same, that'd be, I think, a tough sell.
They only get, the deputies only get a deputy only gets, he gets holiday pay. If they work a holiday, that's part of the agreement, if they work a holiday, they get double time and a half. If it's their day off and it's a holiday, they just get a standard 10 hours. This year they have a shift differential. Outside of that, deputies don't get anything else as a deputy other than whatever, whether they're a sergeant or a detective or a captain or whatever. And they just get that percentage that we have broke down in the 4% that we get to play with. Detention and dispatch control, they've had shift differential, so if they work what we call the power shift 2 to midnight, or, that's when they were working 10s, now they're working 12s to keep everything going. So if they work the nights, they get so much, if they work the afternoons, they get so much, and then if they work weekends, they get so much more, just for working weekends. They all get the holiday pay, they all get the on-duty holiday pay and the off-duty holiday pay, but deputy coroners are assigned by me, and then they get their $142.58 as a stipend for that, which is on some of our calls. You want to give it back. I didn't want to see that, but that's there, and I think that's about it. Isn't that, Brandon? FTO pay, if there's a trainer, they just got an increase in their FTO pay. A lot of liability with field training, so the trainer gets, while they're training a new deputy or detention officer or dispatcher, they get a certain amount of money per hour for that. And then once they're done training, they don't get it anymore. So it's only during the training time, so. Harris. That's it? Okay.
Is there any way you can increase that 45 cents and 10 cents?
Well, we just increased them.
You can't increase that because you can't, per statute, you can't go over the percentage. Deputies have everywhere from 85 to 95%. Now you can't go over, I think it was 95 if we read the law right.
Sheriff's at 95, you can't make more than a sheriff.
Yeah, no, that's what we
And
go
how often-
over with the stipend though.
How often
Or
can you do that?
The shift.
Every year, or every contract, or every 5 years?
Well, if the pay doesn't change, like last year, then we can't do anything. So, the only way there's some movement is if there's some movement on elected officials.
So there's two statutes that we're kind of in between here. One is 7-4-2503, and that lays out the base requirement for the elected officials to have the same base pay, and then the sheriff gets a bonus, and there's some other bonuses involved depending on, like Doug Ellis is doing like 4 different jobs, so he gets a bonus because he has several offices that are consolidated under him. Then 7-4-2508 is the compensation schedule for the under sheriff and the deputy sheriffs. And because we're a county of under 15,000 people, then that limits that range of deputies between 85% and 90% of the sheriff's compensation. The under sheriff is at 95%, and it says, for purposes of this section, compensation means the base rate of pay. It does not mean longevity payments or payments for hours worked overtime. So Cause each officer has a longevity payments that's specific to their career and their own service.
So their overtime rate could be lots higher?
No, I mean, the overtime rate's gonna be established by, like, for these guys, by the union agreement and by the county policy. But if someone's working overtime, that doesn't make them later have to, next month they get a cut because they're over for the year. That overtime is not considered, it's still hours worked beyond their shift, which we have to do because of the labor law anyway, if you're over the 40 hours.
I'm so flabbergasted, y'all think that you deserve a 4% raise.
Anyway, it's hard to take us way off track. I just want to interject this more for food for thought for coming years. I think it might make sense for us to sit down and do a more creative brainstorming thing prior to next March when we're gearing up for another budget battle.
Yeah, sure.
Back a few months ago, when the county was beginning to talk about the budget, and it was in the newspaper, a lot of people told me, sure, a special mill levy for the sheriff's department, if only the actual budget of the regularly scheduled budget that the sheriff's department gets doesn't get cut if the mill levy gets approved. That the mill levy should be in addition to their regular budget in the county's budget system.
And that's always been my idea. We're not gonna cut their budget just because if they get 10, if they go out for 15 mills and they get 15 mills, they still get the mills that we're giving them right now. The only way that would get cut was if the state, like they did this year, they cut a certain percentage of our mills down because the value went up. So that percentage would still get applied, but their base fund would still stay the same. And the other part of that too is if you pass that mill levy for public safety, and that's what it's passed for, that's the only place that money can go is to public safety.
We have examples of this to show that this is how it's done. However, or where that rumor came from that we would do what you're describing, it's absolutely 100% false. We have examples to show where if you get a voted mill levy, it's on top of what you're already getting. We don't take mills away. Also with that, and part of that previous discussion is, if there's a mill levy vote for public safety, this commission could not use it to increase the salaries of elected officials. Could not. It's only for public safety.
And public safety, that's a broad brush, anywhere from painting fire hydrants so that you can see them to curbs or whatever. Would this go straight to the sheriff's department?
Public safety is the sheriff's department.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that rumor's done irreparable harm to our county. So I'm glad you gave us the chance to dispel it again in a public meeting.
Well, then the public just didn't have enough information from you guys in the first place.
Mike, do you have a vote still on the table for the 3.9% COLA?
Yeah, we still have.
Can I ask for the question?
Yeah.
Okay, I asked for the question, or call for the question.
So we'll have a vote. Is there any further discussion on the COLA? So we'll have a vote. All in favor of the 3.9% COLA? Vote. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Tim Riedel, just a quick question. How does the 3.9 compare to this next fiscal year's increase in COLA at the national level? Anybody know?
I haven't seen numbers on that yet to know,
No, I haven't seen any numbers on it.
and every county has done something different with the COLA.
So Debbie, with the departmental budgets, could you share your thoughts on planning and where we're at? I'm looking at the tax levy requirements report.
So you're talking about the planning department specific?
Yeah, just the fund 2260, 2250. We have a deficit of just $352 with all the work that you've done. What you had suggested is that could be realized in just one, $350 cut expenses, or two, we can reevaluate some of the planning fees. They haven't been reevaluated in a good 10+ years. With departments that are funded this way, it's my personal opinion that if you're getting a special service from the county that is above and beyond what is kind of our baseline services, then you should pay for that. It shouldn't be the taxpayers paying for your extra services. So planning fees may have to be reevaluated just like we did sanitation fees last year. But for balancing their budget for the time being, we could just require that money cut in expenses, $352, is that what it is?
Pardon?
$352?
$340.28.
Thank you. So not
Make
quite
it zero.
$350. All right. What do you guys think?
You just pull that out of a pill then?
Nope, nope, I would suggest either a slight increase to the revenue report or a slight decrease to the expenses, and balance it that way.
And I could work with Nicole and she could tell me what areas she can
Yeah,
cut.
I'm sure there's probably someplace in that we can
We
make
even
that
from
adjustment.
postage to office supplies to
Sure.
a less sign for an order or something.
Okay.
I don't know how all she goes with her.
Is that the only negative, Debbie? I know you have a plan for WIC and bioterrorism. Is there anything else?
Nope, I got last minute numbers on the victim witness and that'll take care of that. Shortage.
Jump vehicle, you've got a plan to pull from the CIP?
We've got stuff from the state. The budget's worked out and she's already submitted that to the state with the leftovers, so that one's all squared away and balanced. We got numbers from them earlier this year than we have in the past, so that made it easier to finish ahead of time.
So if I don't see any more negatives, I'm not missing something, is what you're saying?
Nope.
Okay.